Now, I'm not trying to make this into a gaming channel, but I was on the Gen 1 OU ladder the other day, and I came across some absolute cheese. Now, of course, in Gen 1, that's to be expected, but this game's kind of special, and I think you'll see why. So, thank you Major Jetlag for letting me use this replay. It's a pretty standard Gen 1 opening, Starmie versus Gengar. Now, I could go for Thunderwave, but I'm expecting Chansey to come in, so I go for Psychic, and it's a good thing Gengar got out of there because that critical hit would have killed it. Now, I'm expecting this to be a Sing Chansey, because a lot of people, myself included, don't like to rely on Gengar as their only sleeper, because Hypnosis is only 60% accurate, it gets hit hard by Psychic and Earthquake, and it likes to explode. So, a lot of Gengar teams are going to have a secondary sleeper, because Gen 1 sleep is just way too good. So, I missed my Blizzard unfortunately, and Starmie gets paralyzed. Now, this could be a double status Chansey, that's a pretty scary set, but right now my biggest concern is Thunderbolt. So I get Starmie out of there, I send an Exeggutor, and I'm wrong for a second time, it's Seismic Toss. And you can never assume anything about a Seismic Toss Chansey. Like, realistically, if Chansey has Thunderbolt, it's gonna have Ice Beam. Thunderbolt Seismic Toss is not a good set. But if it has Seismic Toss, I mean, it could have Reflect, it could have Counter, it could have Sing. I've even seen people use Growl, like it's Miltank in Gen 2, and even that's pretty annoying sometimes. But right now it doesn't really matter, Exeggutor's in, I can get my Sleep Powder off. So what's going to absorb it? It's a Raichu. Now that's a really interesting pick that we're going to talk about in a minute. But yeah, sending in Raichu there, that's a good call, because with Exeggutor and Chansey around, it's not really going to do anything. Because yes, I do have a Chansey. And believe it or not, I have a Snorlax and a Tauros too. What do you think my last Pokemon is? You have a couple turns to guess. So, I go for the free Psychic, and I hit an Articuno. Now let's go to the team builder for a second, because I'm sure some of you have probably noticed that Jetlag's team is actually a pretty standard Articuno thing, but it has the orange Pikachu here instead of Zapdos. Now, obviously, the overwhelming majority of the time, Raichu is just a worse Jolteon, but on these kind of teams specifically, at least on paper, Raichu actually does make a little bit of sense. So let's look at a standard Articuno team first. If you've seen the samples teams, you've seen this team before. So the theory is, Articuno kills Rhydon, Zapdos comes in, Zapdos kills the water types that wall Articuno, and then you can try to sweep from there. So what's wrong with this plan? Well, first of all, Articuno killing Rhydon, and Zapdos killing the water types, those are not at all guaranteed. Because, I mean, yeah, Articuno one-shots Rhydon with Blizzard, but it also one-shots you with Rock Slide. And the minute you flash a flying type in front of a Rhydon, and if it's not using Rock Slide, it's using Body Slam, which means Articuno might get paralyzed on the switch, or it's using Substitute. And if Articuno comes in on a Substitute, then that's not good either. So Articuno taking out Rhydon, already step 1 of your plan is not reliable whatsoever. And then Zapdos taking out the water types, that's a lot more common. But I mean, most Starmie sets have Blizzard. Every single Cloyster set has Blizzard. If for some reason you see a Lapras in OU, it's gonna have Blizzard. And even Slowbro, if it has a couple boosts up, it can try to stay in. And if it does that, and you don't get the crit with Thunderbolt, bare minimum, you're getting paralyzed. And as we're going to get to in a second, status really messes this team up. So your main strategy with this team isn't reliable. And if you have Zapdos and Articuno, that's a third of your team right there. And apart from the Earthquake immunity and the Freeze immunity on Articuno, they are absolutely useless on defense. And of course their offenses are amazing, but they both get hard walled by something. Like Zapdos isn't going to get past Rhydon, and Articuno isn't getting past the water types, especially if they are secondarily ice type. So you really need to play catch up with the rest of your team, and that really restricts you. So you have the birds, you have the normal types, because I mean you're not going to drop Chansey or Snorlax just to make Articuno work. I mean that's like taking off your tires so you can go faster. It just doesn't make sense. So you pretty much have to have Gengar here. So you might be thinking, well, if Articuno can't take out Rhydon consistently, why not put Exeggutor here? Well, if you do that, first of all, it's slow, namely slower than Cloyster, which I mean, Cloyster switches into Articuno all day long, and if it doesn't have rest, which not every Cloyster does, Zapdos doesn't have a clean switch in, because Blizzard, Hyper Beam, Explosion, they all hurt really, really bad, and if it gets hit with Clamp, then Cloyster's just going to switch out anyway, so you really want that speed. And also, Gengar has Thunderbolt, which I mean, obviously against most of the water types, Psychic with Exeggutor is fine. But if you're going up against Starmie, you really need to have Mega Drain in order to damage it. And if you're using Mega Drain, first of all, it's not doing anywhere near as much damage. And second of all, if you're using Mega Drain, you're not using Stun Spore. So that means your speed is even more of an issue. And plus, you get an extra Ice weakness, so Cloyster is even better against you. You get an extra Fire weakness, so Moltres is going to mess you up. You get a quadruple Bug weakness, so if Beedrill comes in, it's going to one-shot you with Twin Needle after a Swords Dance. And worst of all, you lose your normal resist. And that is really, really bad, because now any Hyper Beam, any Explosion is going to do massive damage to something. And apart from Chansey, your only healing with this team is Rest on Snorlax, which invites so many things in. So any damage you do to this team, it's gonna stick. So you really need to have that normal immunity, otherwise you're just going to be taking way too much damage. So you pretty much have to have Gengar here because that's the only thing that can really fill that role. But of course Gengar has its own problems. I mean, Hypnosis is only 60% accurate, it's super frail, and it likes to explode. So it's not reliable at getting the sleep off. And I mean, no team in Gen 1 can really afford to miss the sleep. But this team especially, you have to attack as often as possible, and you can't allow any retaliation at all. Because like we just said, any damage you do to this team, it's probably going to be permanent. So you need a secondary sleeper, but you already used up all 6 of your slots, so your only other sleeper on this team is Chansey. And you see Ice Beam here. You might be thinking, well, you have Big Bolt and Big Beam right here. Why not use Seismic Toss for the good neutral hit? Well, Zapdos isn't taking on Rhydon. Gengar's not taking on Rhydon. Because even if you have Mega Drain, which I've literally never seen, you have to hit it on the switch because it's only a 2-hit kill. So Gengar's not taking Rhydon on. And we already said that Articuno taking on Rhydon is a bit risky. So you need another Rhydon answer, so you need to have Ice Beam here to 2-tap Rhydon. Because if you have Seismic Toss, even if you have Reflect, Rhydon has 101 HP substitutes, so it could just throw those up and try to break through your Reflect. So you need to have Ice Beam here, and I mean, you might as well use Triple KO Chansey, because I mean, if you don't have Thunder Wave, then even if you have Reflect, the normal types can just try to crit through you. And, I mean, the normal types really threaten the birds, and you really don't want them attacking anyway. So, like, you really probably want counter to punish them. But, of course, the problem with this team is, what if they have Earthquake? Like, most Tauros have Earthquake, and a very large portion of Snorlax have Earthquake. So not only does that hurt Gengar, but now they can play around your counter. And if Freeze Claws is active and Sleep Claws is active, now you're basically not threatening them at all. And I mean, you could try to switch the birds in on Earthquake, but Tauros outspeeds both of them. And if Snorlax has Earthquake, there's a very good chance it has either Hyper Beam or Self-Destruct. And even if it doesn't, I mean, Body Slam Paralysis, that cripples the birds. So you really need another normal type answer, because Gengar can't take on normal types that have Earthquake. So you have to have Reflect on Snorlax. And obviously you're not going to use Reflect without Rest. That just doesn't make sense. So you have Body Slam here, which is obviously mandatory. But now you need a strong hit against enemy Chansey and enemy Cloyster. Because Ice Beam and Earthquake aren't going to do that for you. So they put Self-Destruct here. But I mean, obviously, if Snorlax is resting, then it's not going to hit Cloyster or Chansey. And obviously Self-Destruct kills your Snorlax, which you might not want to do. So you see here they put Thunderbolt on Tauros just to have that little extra insurance against Cloyster. So mission accomplished, right? Well no, remember when I said that a third of your team gets walled by something? It's actually 2/3, because these two Pokemon right here can't hit Gengar. And in fact, it's actually 5 out of 6, because if Freeze Claws and Sleep Claws are active, this Chansey can't hit water types. So pretty much everything on your team gets walled by something, and the odd one out, Gengar, folds to any psychic or ground attack.
Look at this. It's a fucking mess.
So I mean, you're dancing around everything, you're getting chipped by everything, because I mean, apart from normal and ground, you don't have any resistances. You don't even have a psychic resist. So the psychic types are just going to throw their psychic moves out, and they're going to get special drops on everything. So you have no resistances, so you're getting chipped down. So, I mean, even if the birds make it to the end game, they're not going to be at full health. And, I mean, Tauros outspeeds you, Starmie outspeeds you, Alakazam outspeeds you. And I mean, if they have Jolteon, like if your team is chipped and Jolteon gets in on rest, that's probably the game. Because really nothing on this team can take on Jolteon. So I mean, obviously Zapdos and Articuno, their offenses are absolutely amazing. So I mean, if everything goes right, this team can do quite a bit of damage. But like, you pretty much need psychic powers to pull that off. And there's no psychic types on this team, so you have to supply your own. So, how are we going to fix this team? Well, the easiest way is to just drop Articuno for damn near anything else. But, you know, maybe you like Articuno. Maybe you're like me, and when you were a kid, your sister would play Pokemon Stadium, and they would spam Ice Beam Articuno at everything. You know, those kind of things happen. So what does Jetlag do? They put Raichu here. Now, keep in mind, Raichu is significantly weaker than both Zapdos and Jolteon. So in practice, what I'm saying probably isn't true. Because at the end of the day, I'm just an idiot on the ladder. So if you're using Raichu instead of Zapdos, in exchange for the Rhydon matchup, you lose the Exeggutor matchup and the Chansey matchup. Now, 99% of the time, that's not a good trade, because most teams, they either have a Water type, or Exeggutor, or a Reflect user with Ice Beam, if not more than one of those things. And all of those take on Rhydon significantly better than Raichu does. However, if you can't fit any of those on your team, which this team can't fit them, now Raichu actually kind of seems like an appealing option. So first of all, the Exeggutor matchup. Articuno 2-taps it with Blizzard, and unlike Rhydon, it doesn't immediately threaten you back without exploding. I mean, status is still going to be real bad, but that's a much more reliable matchup than the Rhydon matchup. So that's less of an issue. And if Raichu can take on Rhydon, which, I mean, is still very, very risky, but the Rhydon player does have to respect the threat. So the fact that Raichu can take on Rhydon, not only does that take a lot of pressure off of Articuno, it takes a lot of pressure off of Chansey. So you see here, it has Seismic Toss for the good neutral hit, because these two Pokemon right here, they already handle Rhydon okay. So you can afford to miss Ice Beam here. And if Rhydon's not coming in as often, then Gengar can come in a lot more often, and it can throw Hypnosis out a little bit better. So you can see here, Jetlag has Thunder Wave instead of Sing. Well, I mean, it could be Sing here, but if you have Thunder Wave, then with Seismic Toss, now you can muscle past the water types. So Raichu's lower power level is less of an issue because it doesn't have to fight the water types alone. And for the sake of argument, let's assume it's Reflect here. If you have Reflect here, now Chansey is actually a decent check to the other normal types, which means you don't have to run Reflect on Snorlax. And you see here, Jetlag has a full offense Snorlax with Earthquake and Self-Destruct. And since Raichu has an Ice neutrality instead of an Ice weakness, and it's getting back up from Chansey, now Cloyster is a lot less of a threat. So Tauros, you see it has Earthquake. So now your normal types can actually take on Gengar, and they can play around counter users. Now, obviously, Raichu doesn't fix everything wrong with this team. I mean, you're still pretty slow. Status still kind of messes you up. You don't have super reliable sleep. You don't have super reliable healing. But, I mean, you're walled by a whole lot less. So, I mean, I think that has to count for something, right? I guess the whole point of this segment is that I think a lot of people are going to look at this team and think that Raichu is the thing that's bottlenecking it. But it's really Articuno. And the fact that Jetlag found a situation where Raichu kind of sort of makes sense and might improve the team the tiniest bit, honestly, I think that's really cool. So, yeah. Moral of the story is, Raichu's okay. Articuno fucking sucks though. But yeah, obviously I'm not leaving Exeggutor in on Articuno, so I send Starmie in. It takes the Blizzard as well as you'd expect. And I could go for Thunder Wave, but of course I'm expecting Chansey to come in again, so I get paralyzed. I don't even remember what I clicked, but it clearly doesn't matter. So I get my own Chansey in there because if this has Seismic Toss, I have Ice Beam, so I can go for the freeze. Now I go for Thunderbolt first because I'm expecting Articuno to come in for some reason. But it looks like Chansey is staying in, so 1 Ice Beam, 2 Ice Beam, I get the freeze. And if you've ever played Gen 1, you know that at least 50% of forfeits happen right here. So props to Major Jetlag for sticking it out. Remember, it's Gen 1. If you have a healthy Tauros, you have a chance to win the game. It's really that simple. So Gengar comes in, and I throw out a Thunder Wave because, of course, Freeze Clause is active, Sleep Clause is active. Now I can throw out Paralysis for free. So I switch to Exeggutor so I can get some Psychic damage off. I take a Nightshade, that's okay. Articuno comes in, I chip it a little bit. I switch back to Starmie, it takes a Blizzard. And unfortunately, Articuno is going to crit with his Hyper Beam and take me out. Have you figured out my last Pokemon yet? It's my favorite Pokemon of all time.
Gengar!
Which does not have Levitate in this generation, and it doesn't have it today.
One of those circle of life kind of things.
Just as Arceus intended. Now, I go for Thunderbolt, and Snorlax comes in, and of course you're probably not going to switch Snorlax into Gengar unless it has Earthquake. So I get Gengar out of there, I switch to Exeggutor, and yep, it's Earthquake. I go for Psychic, Gengar comes in. I guess he was expecting an explosion, but now Chansey comes in, and I could brute force my way through with Psychic, but I really don't want to do that. So I go for Snorlax, and I go for Earthquake first, just in case Gengar comes in, but Major Jetlag sends in their own Snorlax, and now it's time for the Snorlax War.
I don't know why, but I keep thinking something's bound to go wrong.
This is why you're my favorite Pokemon. So now, Tauros comes in, I switch to Exeggutor to eat this Earthquake, and this next turn coming up is the entire reason I'm making this video, because in pretty much any other game, Tauros would hit me with Body Slam, and I would go down. So what happens in this game? He goes for Body Slam, and I get a 1 in 256 miss. Okay, this is perfect. I can get my explosion off. Pause the video right now, and tell me in the comments how much this explosion is gonna do. 60%? 70%?
Fuck this shit!
If you said 0, you probably saw the thumbnail and knew exactly where this was going.
Nerd!
But yeah, a double 1 in 256 miss. That's a 1 in 65,525 chance. And keep in mind, in this case, if the first miss doesn't happen, the second miss doesn't happen. Because if Tauros hits the Body Slam, Exeggutor goes down. Like these are the times where you start questioning if free will exists. Because it seems like the outcome of the turn has absolutely nothing to do with what you clicked. And this is why everyone should play Gen 1 at least once, because nothing really gets you questioning life like this. Well, I mean, BKC would probably say the same thing about Gen 5 OU. And I mean, he's probably right, because my only experience with Gen 5 is going on Wi-Fi battles when I was like 12 years old. And I would just go on there with Shell Smash Cloyster and annihilate the poor child on the other side who just wanted to use his 6 evolutions. So yeah, I have no experience with Gen 5. If you want me to play Gen 5, post in the comments. I might do it, I don't know. But yeah. So after Jetlag and I recover from whatever just happened, we go for the Tauros War. We had a Chansey War, we had a Snorlax War, and now it's a Tauros War. It's Gen 1, what can I say? So we both go for Body Slam, and because the RNG isn't jacked enough, we both get critical hits. Now, we're both going to go for Hyper Beam, and Jetlag's going to go first, and clearly the Hax Gods felt really bad about the last turn, because it shines a little bit of light in Tauros' face, so they miss, I hit. Articuno comes in, and I'm not going to lie, I'm not used to facing Articuno, so I had to use the calculator for this. And apparently I had a 99.5% chance of killing it with Hyper Beam here. Now, after what just happened, I wouldn't have been surprised if I hit the 0.5% long shot. But clearly the Hax Gods are done trolling for today because they let me land this Hyper Beam. And now, with the rest of their Pokemon statused and at low health, Jetlag, my fellow casualty in the Hax Wars, says GG and dips. And I can't really blame him. So yeah, that's a pretty weird game. So before the video ends, I have two more things to say. First of all, if you like the Pokemon trading card game, go check out my sister's channel, Skeeto Baby Marie. She does card unboxings, and every so often she does the TCG online game. So I'll post her channel in the description, and I'll also post it in a pinned comment. And second of all, if you like the beat that's been playing in the background the whole time, I made it. This is a music channel first and foremost. So I'll link that in the description and the pinned comment as well. So yeah, I'm gonna let this beat ride out, and y'all have a nice day.